Hello, everybody. Welcome to Frontline Football. So I bet y'all all heard the news that Tom Brady has retired. But one of the things that struck me as weird is Tom Brady, in his report, never put that he was retiring. He never put the word retire in there. So I have a theory that could probably help us solve this problem. So first, we gotta start out with who Tom Brady lost to won against the most. The Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills lost to the Kansas City Chiefs. You know who the Kansas City Chiefs lost to? The Cincinnati Bengals. You know who the Cincinnati Bengals have? Joe Burrow. Joe Montana, Joe Namath. Guess what they all have in common? They've won a Super Bowl and national championship. Brady has won a Super Bowl. So we got that. But we also need another team who won a so we find that on the Cincinnati Bengals too with AJ Green. Who did AJ Green go to? The Cardinals. Who did the Cardinals lose to in the Super Bowl? The Steelers. The Steelers have Big Ben. Big Ben also retired this year. He's known for being injured. Medicare is something that's supposed to cover for people's hospitals. So, who promotes Medicare and Medicaid? Joe Namath. You know who Joe Namath was about to sign with? The Cardinals. And then the Cardinals were swooped in by the Jets. You know who the Jets have on their team? Michael Carter. You know who Michael Carter shares a common name with? Michael Jordan. You know what Michael Jordan did? He retired. They went to go play baseball. You know what Brady did? He went to go play baseball. He could have gone to baseball. So Brady's going to go to baseball next. But then Michael Jordan came back to basketball. Brady's going to come back to football. Then retire again. And then he's going to go to basketball. And then he's going to show that he's the greatest player of all time in all of those sports because of the Buffalo Bills. Thank you for hearing my TED Talk. This is Frontline Football. I got my Jets cap on, the most on Tom Brady, and roll the intro.
Welcome guys to Frontline Football. We're going to start with head coach hirings, which we are going to start off with the most recent one, which is Josh McDaniels. Since this guy used to be a part of the New England teams, I'm going to hand this one off to Jack.
All right, first head coaching candidate we're getting a nice look at here is Josh McDaniels. We know his coaching tree. He's a Bill Belichick guy. He's 45, thought he was older. Went to John Carroll, and his latest job was the New England offense coordinator. Raiders just hired them. Look, the pros, he's part of the Belichick tree. He's got a good offensive mind. He's the rise of mac and cheese. He contributed to that. And he likes to run the ball a lot, so that's some good pros. Bad news is he had some questionable things that he did with the Broncos when he left. He left the team. I think he left the Colts or the Broncos. It was all very confusing, but he's got some commitment issues. But if he can stay committed to the Raiders with Josh Jacobs and Kenyon Drake, he may not be the most evolutionary offensive mind that the Raiders could have gotten, but he could create a pretty solid run game system. He could get Darren Waller involved, kind of like how they use Hunter Henry, Gianna Smith. It's going to be similar with Darren Waller and Foster Moreau. But overall, I think this is a pretty decent fit for the Raiders. I'm not blown away by Josh McDaniels because you kind of know what you're getting with him, but I'll give it a B for right now. It could improve, but I could definitely see the Raiders making another playoff run led by McDaniels. What are your thoughts, Josh?
So with this, I have to just look at the facts of the Denver Broncos was his last head coaching job. Now, if you're too young to remember, that was the Tebow time Broncos. Now, you may be thinking, Tebow, that's the guy who talks about all the Jesus stuff and all that things from Florida. Yeah, he was that, and they became one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. Josh McDaniels was his head coach in that time. So I'm right now looking at the presentation, and like Jack said, the Colts did try to hire him, and then he just left. So we don't know if this guy's going to but he can't be any worse than John Gruden. So at least it's a step up, but that's like saying that, I don't know. I can't come up with an analogy that quick. So Josh McDaniels, I gotta give him a D+ because I feel like there was a lot better head coaches in the market, and I think that they did not do their job. But it is going to create a really good running game, and I really think that this is going to be an exciting team to watch. D+ could go to a C. Zach?
All right, cool. Yeah, I don't trust him as much as the other head coaching candidates, which we'll talk about a little later in the video. Yeah, he did train up Mac Jones, which was very impressive. Great offensive mind, like Jack and Josh said, and I feel like he's gonna get Josh Jacobs, and I believe Kenyon Drake is still on the team. I might be wrong about that, but those two, I feel like he's gonna get them more into the offense than they already are. And Waller, like Jack said, will be like a Hunter Henry to him, which will be great for Darren Waller if he can stay healthy. He's also working with a quarterback that kind of plays similar to Mac Jones, so Josh McDaniels will find out how Derek Carr works. The only thing that kind of scares me about his offense is that O-line, which he cannot really control, and finding good quality wide receivers. I understand that Belichick couldn't find any, but I don't know about his coaching tree and how they can find them. So that's kind of some concerns with it. Of course, the Bills game that he had, he didn't get a lot going. It was more of a team-wise. Has abandoning issues, which, like Jack and Josh said, he did have the Colts job. If he doesn't get it, it's just fine. So, yeah. Alright. Our next head coach is Brian Dable. Now, Jack's I take this one because he used to be a part of his division, and he is now a part of that New York area. Jack?
We got the Brian Dable. Now, as you know, he's been hired already. There are pros and cons. I don't know why they were out of order. But he has a lot of NFL experience, which is always a good thing, NFL experience. He's been around the block for a while. He comes from the Belichick coaching tree. He started in Rochester, one of the two. And he's just been around. He's only 46, though, which is kind of surprising for all the amount of experience. Some good news is he's going to get most of the credit for developing what was considered at the time a very raw and unfiltered Josh Allen that needed to go a long way, and he did. He developed him to one of the best QBs in the league, which was pretty much a borderline project and a very risky pick at the time. So that's a big deal for when it comes to the Giants, developing a quarterback that they currently don't have. Some cons are he's never had a head coaching job before. He couldn't really start up a run game, and everything was just Josh Allen for that last year. And he's had some questionable moments. But overall, I really like this hire for the Giants. I think he's probably the best hire out of the bunch so far, actually. I give him an A to A+. I think no matter what he does, he's going to be able to establish himself. He's a calming veteran presence. He can give the Giants an identity on offense once again. And it's going to be interesting to see what they do in the Giants because there's a lot of directions. They have a lot of talented playmakers, but then they have questions at the O-line, which is still really bad. Do they want to keep Daniel Jones, or do they want to take a chance on a project quarterback? Like Josh Allen and the Bills a couple years ago, you could take one of the projects in this draft, try to develop him. Malik Wills, Sam Howell. There's a couple quarterbacks, so it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. But overall, I really like the Dable hire for the Giants. I was very interested in him last year when the Jets needed a head coach. I think he's going to come a long way. It's going to take time. It's not going to happen immediately. But ultimately, I think he's going to go down as one of the best head coaches in this cycle. What are your thoughts, Zach?
I really like this hire for the Giants especially. They have such a great offense that just needs to get started up with either a good quarterback or something needs to start working. I think that Dable is the perfect piece for here because, like Jack said, he built up Josh Allen to who he is right now. If he can do that with Daniel Jones, that would be very impressive. Also, the Bills didn't really have running backs. Jack mentioned that they couldn't really form a running game while he was there. But now he's working with Saquon Barkley. He can give him some reps, not as much as if he runs it kind of like a Josh Allen style offense. Saquon will just be there as a contributor in the passing game and He'll run the ball sometimes, but not as commonly, which will be great for Saquon, especially because of how much he is injury prone. So I feel like this just works with the Giants and where they want to go with this team right now. So yeah, Josh.
Well, for this coaching hire, I'm going to give it a B plus. While another con about this is it also started the Brian Flores lawsuits that are currently underway. We'll talk about more about that whenever Brian Flores starts, which it wasn't really his fault. It was mostly Belichick not knowing which contact to go to, and a lot more stuff that Flores has been dealing with. That was just the boiling over point. So we'll talk about that probably a little bit later. Not as much in detail. If you want to go watch another person's video on that situation, do that after this video. So with this hire, I think it's a B plus. You know, he's a Buffalo guy, and the assistant GM for the Bills was also hired as their GM. So the writing was on the walls that this guy would. I'm gonna give this a good B plus, maybe an A. I just have to see a little bit more, especially in his run game and how he can spread out the ball, because Josh Allen that last year seemed to really run the offense while Dable was looking a little bit worse off than he usually does, especially with that running game. But if he can get all the stuff together along with creating a great team and at least getting them above 500 this first year, maybe into the playoffs, I would see this as a good hire.
All right, our next guy is. I'm gonna need some help with this one, but it's Matt.
Eberflus.
I'm gonna just hand this one off to Josh.
Okay, our next guy is Matt Eberflus. He is right now the Bears head coach. He is 51 years old. His last job was the Colts defensive coordinator. Jeez, this sounds like a dating show. And his coaching tree is Frank Wright. Now, if you don't know who Frank Wright is, it's basically a part of the Doug Peterson coaching tree, which is a subsection of the Andy Reid coaching tree. So, he is technically from the Andy Reid coaching tree by affiliation. So, his pros are he's a good defensive mind, a good motivator, develops young talent, specifically in the secondary. He has a very great reach on the secondary with some of his experience coming from the Legion of Boom. So, being, I think, their secondaries coach. So, yeah, he has experience with secondaries, so that would be amazing if I'll go. And then some of his cons is, in the clutch, he can't really show off what he does. He kind of has meltdowns with that. He's very inconsistent and scary. Yeah, he's just this is one of the boomer bust head coaching hires. Now, Eberflus would not be my first choice, especially for a team like the Bears who are trying to Justin Fields. And last time I checked, the last good quarterback to come out of Indy was Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck has retired years ago. Since then, they've gone through Jacoby Brissett, Sam Ellinger, Carson Wentz. They've gone through a lot of quarterbacks. So, I think this was probably not the best hire, especially due to personnel. And I think this is, I want to say a C, maybe a D minus, somewhere in that range, because I just don't see his appeal this year because, I'm about to say, Jacksonville was not a good game for the defense. And there was too many moments where there was inconsistency. Now, if this was last year, this would be somewhat of a good hire, but this just doesn't make sense. There were so many better defensive-minded head coach like DeMeco Ryan or someone like Leslie Frazier, for example. I know that his defense imploded in the last game, but he made the playoffs. That's the difference. And I don't see that same thing with Eberflus I can see it with his early coaching. So I'm going to have to give this, my final grade will be a D for this. Jack?
Like Josh, not the biggest fan of Eberflus here. I do like him as a defensive mind. As a whole, there are pieces that I don't like of him. He is good at motivating his players. He seems like very genuine. He's about good energy and developing players in his press conference. So that's the way he looks at himself based on the press conferences. And another thing is, I think part of his rise to fame is, for one, the Colts defense was pretty good until the end. Inconsistent, but not horrible. But he was able to develop their young secondary, including the rise of Kenny Moore, who became a very good corner, Pro Bowl level this year. And I think Julian Blackmon's a safety that really stepped it up this year. So he is good at developing the young secondary talent, which is good for the Bears since we know they have an established pass rush in Khalil Mack and Robert Quinn. They got Roquan Smith, but their secondary is dicey other than Eddie Jackson. So it would be good to get a guy that could possibly develop their secondary. It's young and inexperienced, but it could potentially take steps forward. My main issue with this is, he melted down in the clutch against the 2-win Jaguars at the time. His defense is inconsistent. And overall, I can't trust him. And I think he'd be a good coach for certain teams. I don't know if the Bears was necessarily the right team. Unless you have like another hotshot offensive coordinator that's going to get a head coaching gig in like 2 years to come with him, I'm a little concerned. He's a defensive-minded guy, and you have a young quarterback you need to develop. That doesn't really mush. You could have easily just got a veteran defensive coordinator in the building here to take care of your experienced defense and get an offensive mind to prioritize yourself on building your offense up and developing your young talent on offense as a whole. So overall, I'm giving it a C-. I don't really buy it. We'll see if we're proven wrong. I think the Bears are going to have a good defense, but I'm very concerned about what they're going to do on the offensive side of the ball. What are your thoughts, Zach?
I really like this hire. Not a lot of Bears fans like this hire just because he's a defensive coordinator. They really want an offensive minded to work with Justin Fields. But there's some really good things. This Bears defense will be looking very good. I understand that they've had meltdowns in the clutch and all that. But other than that, the Colts had a really, really successful defense. And yeah, I just think that this is a really solid hiring. I understand there's a lot of problems going into it, and there's so much better that they could have done, especially getting a defensive-minded coach. Like they could have gotten Brian Flores. They could have gotten a bunch of other guys that I'm not thinking of at this time. So they could have gotten all these defensive-minded coaches, but they went early. They got this guy. So not bad, but yeah. All right, our next guy is going to be Nathaniel Hackett from the Green Bay Packers. He's a part of the LaFleur tree. His cons, I'm going to start off, is he might be getting carried by his talent in Green Bay, and questionable about consistent success, my bad. But there are some good things. Coach is a top offense and an MVP candidate 2 years in a row. That's pretty good, but Aaron Rodgers might have been carrying him, like we said in the cons. Blake Bortles looked good, and if you think that Blake Bortles is good, sure, okay. Seems nice, okay. And a smart offensive-minded with a good motor, which comes from LaFleur. So, I like this hiring. I think that the Broncos went really well, especially going with Daniel Hackett. And, yeah, I just think getting an offensive-minded coach for this really well-run offense is perfect. Jack.
I really like the Nathaniel Hackett hire, mainly because it's the Broncos. Does he have his concerns? Yes, because he was with Matt LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers. So there's a chance that he had no input on this offense at all, and he just put his feet up, and he was just like a guy standing around that was there. Maybe he drew up a couple plays occasionally, but overall, there's a good chance he could be just getting carried by Aaron Rodgers. But that doesn't mean that he's a bad head coach. I saw his intro press conference, and I liked what I saw. I liked his mindset, and overall, I think an offensive mind that's been learning from the best, like Matt LaFleur, is what the Broncos need. Vance Joseph, Vic Fangio were the last two head coaches. I think there was John Fox there a couple years ago. It's time to switch it up. These mediocre defensive head coaches just haven't been working for the Broncos the last couple years. Let's try to prioritize the offense and get the job done. Not to mention the Broncos got a lot of young offensive talent for Hackett to work with here. You got Javonte Williams, you got Corden Sutton and Tim Patrick locked up. You got Jerry Jeudy in the building. You got Noah Fant. There's a lot to work with here. Quarterback is still a big question mark, but we'll see moving forward. I like the Hackett hire specifically for Denver. I think it's a good change of pace for the organization as a whole. Try to build your offense up for once. Get an offensive-minded guy, and I think he could very well be legit. He could bring the Green Bay mentality on offense over to Denver and get the job done. Potentially bring Aaron Rodgers over if the rumors are true. But overall, Aaron Rodgers or not, I think Hackett's going to go down as a very solid hire. I'm going to give him a A- to B+. What are your thoughts, Josh?
Well, I am going to say that this is a really good hire by the Denver Broncos because this seems like a good idea by the GM to switch it up. Fangio didn't work, Fox didn't work, and Vance Joseph didn't work. Now it's time to bring in Hackett, who may get Rodgers, and especially if you saw that Saxonville offense that they had, it wasn't great, but it was really good, especially being run by Blake Bortles. There was no reason why that offense should have been really good. It just was because of Leonard Fournette and all the other contributions, and especially that defense that it had. So this seems like a really good head coaching hire, but I do see the question marks of how much of his success is associated with the talent around him. That's a lot of the questions with these head coaches is what is wrong with the talent around them? Were they the ones carrying, or is this guy the real deal? Because it's always a hit or miss with these coaches. Now, I do think that the Broncos are going to have a really great thing to start out with, especially because they are selling the team. This is a really good idea, along with the people that Hackett is bringing in seem like they're all winners. Like Urban Meyer said, I'm a winner, and then went through all of his head coach's resume. So, Hackett came from good areas, came from good teams, and made them better. So, with this hire, I got to give it a B-.
All right, our next guy that has not gotten hired yet and has been in the news a lot is Brian Flores. So, Jack, take this one over.
All right, Brian Flores, very interesting candidate here because there's a lot of question marks surrounding him right now. We know him. He's the Bill Belichick coaching tree. Comes from that long line. He started in New England, slowly but surely moved his way up, and then, of course, he got fired from Miami. But let's look at the pros and the cons. So start out with the positives here. Brian Flores is a very good defensive mind. We know that. He took a very little talented Dolphins defense 2 or 3 years ago now, made them competitive. Then once he started to add and accumulate talent to the defense, he got them up into top 10 range. Not to mention, he's a very good motivator. He seems pretty well liked by his teammates in Miami, and he's an overachiever sometimes. Sometimes he'll completely crash and burn. Sometimes he'll get up. Mainly, I think the key here is he has continued to field successful defenses no matter what happens on the offensive side of the ball, which is messy. The cons of Flores is he's a second half guy. Yeah, he didn't do much in the first half of the season. And this lawsuit thing, it's a good thing that he's doing it, but I don't think ultimately it may cost him a coaching job. We'll see moving forward if he still is able to get a job after this. That's going to be interesting. But ultimately, Flores definitely deserves an opportunity if an NFL team is willing to give it to him. I think he's a great defensive mind, and he's proven that in Miami. Winning record 2 of the 3 years, with the exception of year 1, where they were considered to have one of the worst rosters in history. So overall, he's coaching his guys up consistently. I think Miami's got deeper issues inside is the reason they fired Flores like this, even after a 9-8 season. We'll see if he gets a job moving forward, but I definitely think he deserves a job at this point in time. I think the defense speaks for itself most times. We'll see where that is. But overall, Brian Flores hasn't been on a team, so we can't grade him yet, but I think he's going to be a very good head coach if someone picks him up. What are your thoughts, Zach?
I believe the same thing about Brian Flores. He's a great coach, and he's really young at the age that usual coaches are, which is 60 to 50. So he's really young, and I believe that he also could be a great head coach. I hope if the Cardinals can sign him, I think that they should make an effort instead of Cliff Kingsbury. But yeah, Josh.
So with this is one of the most surprising things. I thought in this offseason we would not be covering Flores because he's such a good head coach that I didn't think that he was going to be fired, especially from a team like the Dolphins. But now hearing about they had with the GM, about Watson, and all this other stuff that's coming out about the team, I can see why he was fired. And it does seem like this that need to be investigated further with the lawsuit. Remember that there's nothing that has been proven, and that everything that we're saying here is alleged. There is no proven fact in this case. So we need to wait for all the evidence to come out, and then we may report more on this. But I think that this lawsuit will affect Flores' coaching career. But the good news is he did tell teams before he was that he was, so then they could help their decision instead of being surprised by the mean. So he does have a really good character, great motivator. I'd love to see him on the Texans. That's one of my good fits that I see him on. The only problem I see with that is our defensive scheme is different from the one that Flores ran in Miami, but that could be a quick change. We get some new personnel in there, and we're up and running again.
All right, our next head coach is this guy was a lot before we start, and it is Gerard Mayo. Jack.
Gerard Mayo. This is an interesting candidate. He's not the most experienced. He was a linebacker up until 2015, and he's just taken over as a linebackers coach in New England. Of course, he's a Belichick tree, and he's only 35 years old. I don't think this guy's getting hired this year, but he has gotten interviews from multiple NFL teams, so don't completely rule him out. He has playing experience on the defensive side of the ball, so he kind of understands, and it was pretty recent that he played football, so it's not like he's been out of the game for a while. He's been playing very recently. He still probably understands a lot of defensive schemes within the league. Not to mention, he's very successful under the defensive mind of Bill Belichick, and this year, as always, though, New England had a very good linebacker core led by Dante Hightower, Kyle Van Noy, and a couple others. One concern about that, though, is those guys were good before him, and they're probably going to be good after him if he leaves. So that's one thing to consider. The other thing is he's only 35 years old, and he's been coaching since 2019, so that's only 3 years. Not a lot of experience. While he's got time to grow, he hasn't even stepped into a coordinator role yet. So there's still a lot of things that need to happen and change over time. We'll see. I think he could be intriguing in a couple years, but nothing. I wouldn't hire him yet. Keep him developing. Let's see how he does. Kyle Van Noy's probably gone in New England. We'll see if he can develop some young linebackers to sort of continue to build up his resume over time. What are your thoughts, Josh?
Well, I'm going to say same thing. I can see how he looks good right now, but I think we need a little bit more time before we actually give him a head coaching job. I'm not saying this because he doesn't seem like a good head coach. He seems like he has a good head on his shoulders. He knows what he's doing. His mind just works very well with these type of situations, especially because he will probably break down those coaches. This will really help him with getting a job, but I think we're going to have to wait a little bit longer before we can call where he's going to be going. But I do believe he could be a great candidate in a couple of years. Zach?
Yeah, he's actually really young for a head coach. And the best thing right now probably is just to get himself out there. And time will tell if he's actually a good head coach, like Jack said. So, yeah. All right, our next is Doug Peterson. Interesting. I guess I'll just take this one. He won a Super Bowl already. He's part of the Andy Reid coaching tree, and he's at the young age of 54. His pros, he won a Super Bowl, like I said. He has a lot of experience being a head coach and also OCDC. Very bad. He had a very bad ending with Philly by well, everyone was to blame for that Philly team. So yeah. Leadership is questionable, but there was a weird ending with Philly, so I don't really think that was all his fault. And he's been a year without football.
Zach, your
Yeah,
grade
yeah,
and
my bad.
announce.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, Doug Peterson. So, with Doug Peterson, the reason he got on this list is he got a finalist. Apparently, he's a finalist in Jacksonville. And in the Saints, he's gotten request interview for one. So he is being considered. He got a second interview in Jacksonville. We'll see moving forward. He's intriguing because that Philadelphia team at the end was really bad, but there's a lot of mixing components that made things messy. There's the power struggle with Howie Roseman going on. So I don't think he's all to blame. There's just a lot of questions about him moving forward because of the weird stuff, benching Jalen Hurts, supposedly tanking the game. It was a very strange situation to close out a year, but he's taking a year off, taking a year to breathe, and he's still a good head coach. He was, at least for the part that he was successful in Philly. He won a Super Bowl, and he has experience in the playoffs, so there's a chance he could be good returning. I think it's a gamble at this point, just because I don't know if anyone's going to be able to figure out how much of that Philly fallout was his fault. So I think while it's risky, it could be worth it if he finds himself similar to another Eagles head coach that got fired and took a little time off. Name is Andy Reid. We'll see, though. I don't know if he gets hired, but there's always an off chance that he will get hired. What are your thoughts, Josh?
I think that with Doug Peterson, he kind of needs the perfect storm of a situation to happen again. Because even that title run was kind of, how should I put it, a fluke. Because the whole underdog thing and Nick Foles playing some of the best football that we've ever seen out of him just all came together at the right time and everything started clicking at the right moment. That's why the Bengals are in the playoffs this year with no O-line. The NFL playoffs are some of the most craziest times of the year. They can be either the most predictable or they can be the most craziest thing you've ever seen. So that Super Bowl championship should be taken with a grain of salt, and especially some of his leadership ability at the ending of his career should be taken into account. Now, I don't think a situation like Jacksonville will be a good idea, especially for him. So I think that the Saints would be a better idea. They have less people, but they have more stability at the top, which is what Peterson needs to succeed. Jacksonville will probably be the worst place for him to go. Will be the worst place for any head coach to go. But especially a head coach who seems like he can't coach whenever there's turmoil. Which, it's hard for any coach, but he seems to really struggle with that. So I'm going to say his best fit is the New Orleans Saints.
All right, cool. Our next guy is Leslie Frazier. He's actually I'll have Jack do this one.
All right, Leslie Frazier. So this guy's been around for quite some time. He's in the Reid coaching tree, which is a little surprising. He started out playing in the early 80s. Then he eventually moved his way up slowly but surely. I think he actually had one stint as a head coach, an intern, or I don't know how long he was in Minnesota. He was in Minnesota for 2 or 3 years. Didn't work out, so he went back to Baltimore, became a secondary coach, and then he eventually moved up to a defense coordinator. And now he's getting considerations again because it's the time of year. Good news is, coached the best defense in the league last season. They're very good, and it's not like they're just being carried by talent or anything like some of the other situations. That's like that's a unit. That's a group of people working together, and they can make up for their flaws and ultimately come together to play as a defense, and not just like a couple pieces. Like, for example, the Rams, they got a couple pieces to make them tick. The Buffalo Bills are a defense, a unit, a group, pretty much. He's very experienced, been around for a while. He's been in the NFL or doing things related to the NFL since the 80s. So he does have that experience, and he seems like he definitely has a good reputation, and from the outside looking in, he seems like a good leader. There is a concern, though. He's already 62. That's not necessarily like your idea of a long-term answer at head coach. He could be gone in 10 years, for all we know. He's not going to coach into his 80s or 70s, so it's not like he's going to be like a long-term guy. But he could be a solid stopgap outing, not to mention he pretty much threw the game away against the Chiefs, left the middle of the field open for Tyreek Hill. Yada, yada, yada. Good defense got destroyed for the most part. So there are concerns. I think the right situation could do him some justice and make him a good head coach, but he reminds me a little too much of Vic Fangio, which did not work out very well. So I have my doubts about Leslie Frazier moving forward, but I do think he could be a head coach for a team that's ready to win now, looking to win a Super Bowl quick, has a team already in place and ready to go. What are your thoughts, Zach?
Yeah, I agree with you there. He's really old. I think he's the oldest head coach that we're gonna be talking about today at 62. He'll probably be playing until I believe he'll play until he's in his 70s. So yeah, and he's had a lot of experience, especially with his defense. He did get dotted up a lot by his by the Chiefs, but the Chiefs have one of the best offenses ever. So yeah, I'm gonna give him a little bit of leeway, but if Frazier goes to a certain team very soon, I wouldn't be so surprised, because people want a really old defensive-minded coach on their team. So yeah, Josh.
Well, Frazier seems like a good idea for a team that has won. The age is a little bit scary. And now he did play for the 85 Bears as a corner, and he did get cut, I think, the season after the 85 season. So, but he always seems to develop really, really good secondary. Now, unfortunately, with the Chiefs, that did not show up. And also with the Pats, his defense was kind of picked apart by a rushing game. So he has some question marks, and there's a lot of different things that need to be answered. But he seems like a quality, at least coordinator. And what's it called? Seems like a good idea, and I'm excited to see where his career will go from here.
Alright, we're going to go through this guy probably quickly, but our next guy is Josh Mccown. Josh, you can take this one over.
Okay, Josh Mccown, you may know him as the career backup. So, he's 42, he has no coaching tree, he actually has no coaching experience. That is the weirdest thing on here. So, let's talk about the places that he's been to a lot of places. Let's just say that. Even to a UFL. It's the United Football League. They're not a football league anymore. They tried to compete with the NFL head on. It didn't work. So, yeah. Good luck with trying to find anything about that anymore. It was a league that was there and then it was gone. You may also know them for Josh Johnson. So, the pros. He was an NFL quarterback, especially a backup quarterback. Those are some of the best people. They're basically like coaches for those young quarterbacks to help them learn. So he knows also a lot of systems too. Just his big problem is he has no coaching experience. He's never coached in his life. He's never had any kind of coaching role on a team. And I just don't get this hire. The only reason why we have him twice and is seen as a finalist, but yeah, that's basically it. So, yeah, Anyone else like to add anything? Zach, do you want to add anything to that?
I don't really think anything. I think you covered it, Jack.
Mccown, he's one of the two people on this list where he's just here because the Texans have some interest. He's the kind of guy that I expect to get a quarterback coach job first and then move his way up. That's pretty much all I have to add.
Okay. So, you want me to take this one, Zach, or?
The next one? Let's
Yeah.
let Jack cover Heinz Ward because he is he last played for Jack's team.
All right. Heinz Ward. Now, this is another interesting one. Heinz Ward, so he started with Adam Gase. He was a legendary Pittsburgh receiver before that, but he was an offensive assistant for the Adam Gase-led Jets. That's not the greatest resume for the most part, but he was a well-liked assistant coach on the Jets. But like Mccown, he lacks experience, and he's really only on here because the Texans brought him in for an interview. I think ultimately, Heinz Ward similar to Josh McCown, but like lesser. He's not on the same level. I don't think he has as much potential just because he played for pretty much one team for the most part. So he doesn't really know a lot of other schemes or playbooks. He's not really like a quarterback, so he wasn't like developing or coaching. So for the most part, could he become a pretty good positional head coach in the future and potentially a good coordinator? Yes, but that is probably way down the line for him. He's not going to go straight to head coach. He's a major long shot right now. But overall, just an intriguing person to have on there. Anything else to add about Heinz Ward?
I think you covered it.
All right.
I think that's basically it.
All right. You got a guy who just got hired, I believe. Evan O'Connell. Did he just get hired, right?
Yeah, he got hired by the Vikings today.
Okay, cool. I guess I'll cover him because they're in my division. Yeah. Guys, really, I guess, I don't really have like a real big, like, I need to see this one sec. I'm sorry, I'm not too good with this yet. Yeah, this guy's actually really solid, especially going into a Vikings team that will have a lot of great pieces for him to work with, like Justin Jefferson, maybe Adam Thielen, Kirk Cousins. Like, there's a lot of great pieces he gets to work with, and I'm excited to see what he can do with this team, especially because of how well he kind of ran this Rams offense with Sean McVay running it with him, which was really interesting. So, yeah. Jack?
So Kevin O'Connell's an interesting one. He's under the McVay tree, and he seems like a strong leader from what I've seen, but I don't know how much influence he has on his offense, and he's always has a lot of talent to work with in the Rams, and he's not the most experienced guy. But I still like the hire for the Vikings for the most part. I give it a B minus because it's not like amazing, but I still think the good news is the Vikings do have a lot of talent to work with. They have Justin Jefferson. They have Dalvin Cook. They have a lot of stuff to work with. I do think he needs to hire a strong defensive coordinator so he can just focus on his side of the ball. So hire a strong defensive coordinator. There are a few out there that could be worth hiring. So look into that to take care of the defense. But when it comes to Minnesota, it's a pretty good landing spot depending on what you want to do. Now, Minnesota, they're, as usual, so much better than their record is because they normally lose games in like stupid and creative ways. So similar to the Chargers, the idea is they need to lose that stupidity factor, and the idea is that O'Connell's going to be the one to do it. He's going to hone in this talent and take it places, make it play up to the level that we know it can play at as a whole in Minnesota. I think it will be good. Justin Jefferson's going to get the Cooper Cup level. Dalvin Cook can be the Cam Akers. There's a lot of good parallels here. I don't know if you want to stick with Kirk Cousins moving forward. That's for the Vikings to figure out. But overall, pretty solid hire. We'll have to see, though. We'll see how good he is in the Minnesota offense. I'm curious who he hires at DC as well. What are your thoughts, Zach?
I already went, so Josh.
Oh, Josh.
like I said before I got cut off, he is a young head coach. He was also a backup quarterback for Tom Brady and a backup quarterback for a lot of other teams. So he has that quarterbacking experience and knows these systems, along with being an offensive coordinator for Sean McVay, which is really good to have. Some of his cons is, well, obviously his experience, and he's not the play caller for his current, and always has the talent because LA and Stan Kroenke put a lot of money into the team, and so we don't know what he's going to be doing, but the good news is he's going from a team with a lot of assets to another team with a lot of assets, and I think that this is a really good fit for them, especially with that core, so I'm going to give this high. Okay. Who's
Okay,
next?
cool. Alright, I think everyone did Kevin O'Connell. We just couldn't hear you. I think your audio cut out at the very end.
Oh, I gave it a B.
Okay,
If that's what cut out.
Yeah, so we are now going to Eric Bieniemy. So, this guy was in the news a lot last year, and he's in the news again for head coaching stuff. I don't really enjoy him too much. I feel like he gets carried by he gets carried a lot by talent. He seems to scare off teams in interviews, and he's not really the primary play caller. That's more of Andy Reid's job. But there is some good things. He is very intelligent, one of the better offensive minds we've seen in the game right now. He has a lot of experience, which is great to have, especially going into it, and especially in the playoffs, because they've been to the playoffs usually a lot of the time. So he's had a lot of pressure going into those games, especially on that probably 13-second drive. He probably was running a lot of that and trying to get everything to work out pretty well, with Patrick Mahomes also doing it. So yeah, Jack.
Bieniemy's a wild card because he seems to be getting interviews every year, and the Chiefs always have one of the best groups in the league, so I'm not really sure what's not translating for him to hire. Something in his interview process doesn't work, or teams just find better options. And another big concern about Bieniemy is he's not the primary offensive mind. That's Andy Reid, and he's not even the first guy Mahomes goes to. That's Matt Kafka, the quarterback coach. There's some good news, though. I still think he's a pretty solid offensive mind. I still think he draws up some plays. I still think he's smart. He's very well respected within the Chiefs organization. A lot of players are confused why he hasn't gotten the coaching opportunity yet and really love him. And, of course, he's got the playoff experience. Every year they go on deep playoff runs. This is the fourth year in a row they've at least made the championship game. So, overall, I think at some point someone may pull the trigger on Bieniemy. But as of right now, no one has. We'll see moving forward who gives second interviews. But overall, I still think Bieniemy's a very bright offensive mind and has a bright future ahead of him. Eventually, someone's going to take a risk, and we'll see what happens moving forward. What are your thoughts, Josh?
Well, I think that, like you said, Bieniemy, he's weird because I don't know why he keeps on getting these opportunities, but never seems to land it on the interviews. Because he always seems like we're always talking about him. So I don't know what's happening. Is it something in the interview? Is it something about the team? Is it something about like who they want? I don't know what's happening. Just something needs to be told because this guy has been a top candidate for years and still hasn't gotten a job anywhere he's gone. So there is some question marks about him, and he does seem like a pretty big boomer bust, especially because, everything that has been coming up of he's not the lead play caller, especially 38 to I think 7. It was 38-7 or 38-0 at the Super Bowl against the Bucs. The game where the Chiefs choked it. There's a lot of question marks. You see the points where it could be helpful to have him, especially because he has played in the NFL and he has a lot of coaching experience. So I think he'd be really if a team just pulls the trigger on him, but it's just about who does that.
All right. Our I feel like these guys are almost the final two guys. We have Byron Leftwich, a offensive coordinator. I believe, yeah, he's the offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I'm gonna hand. Well, I haven't taken one. No, I just took BME. Jack.
Right, Brian Leftwich. He's a guy I really like. He's one of the guys I'm higher on in this coaching cycle, for the most part. He's got a lot of experience. His most recent experience was, of course, with the Bucs. He followed Bruce Arians from Arizona, and the good news is he always seems to have a productive offense. Even without Brady, was that Bucs team good? No. But did it produce on offense a lot? Yes. And based on what I've seen on pretty much all of his press conferences and interviews, he seems like a very calming presence, and he seems like a lot good in the locker room. He's well respected amongst his Bucs teammates, specifically on the offense. And overall, I like his vibe in the press box. I think he would be a good energy to develop like a young core moving forward. And while he hasn't had like major success outside of Brady, he was able to produce an offense, but it was the inconsistent mix where Jameis Winston threw 30 interceptions, that whole debacle weird thing. And I have questions if he can 100% make the jump to being the guy, the leader, not just the background guy, but like the top guy. But overall, I think Leftwich, I don't know why the Jags didn't hire him like a couple weeks ago when they had him in and it was supposed to be a done deal. Because I think that's perfect for a young core. His calming energy and his offensive mind would be very helpful to Trevor Lawrence. They'd be able to surround him. They'd be able to help him out and slowly to keep developing him moving forward. But overall, I feel like Leftwich is going to get a job in this cycle. We'll see. I don't know why the Jags didn't give it to him. But overall, I like him moving forward. I think he's going to be, like Dable, one of the better head coaches in this cycle. What are your thoughts, Josh?
Well, I think that Byron Leftwich is best for the Jaguars job, especially because of Trevor Lawrence. He was a quarterback himself. As you can see, he played for Jacksonville, Atlanta, Pittsburgh, Tampa, and then Pittsburgh again. So he's had the experience. He knows, I guess, quarterbacking. He's also been the quarterback's coach for the Cardinals, the offensive coordinator, the interim offensive coordinator for the Cardinals, and then he was the Bucs offensive coordinator. So he's been around the league. Of course, that's not a lot of head coaching experience, but I think with the right tools and because he is so young, this would be a perfect hire for Jacksonville. I do not know why they're not. This seems like one of the best moves. Their GM is not very smart, so that's probably why. But this is probably one of their better moves that they could do in this offseason. I do think he's going to get a job on the coaching carousel. It's just not an if, but when. Zach, what are your thoughts?
Okay, yeah, I haven't gotten for this guy yet. Okay, so, yeah, he seems really good. Brady didn't have a lot to say about him when he was done, with his career after being retired. He ran a really solid offense, except for the Jameis 30 for 30 year. But other than that, if he could like work with Josh said, the Jags, which I like that system too. If he can work with like Trevor Lawrence, he can make him into like a really good touchdown machine. Maybe seeing the playoffs here and there. So I like this guy a lot. Hopefully he gets the job sooner or later, or else he'll just be wasted because he can really coach up a decent quarterback in our good system. Now, with this Jags job, if he took it, it would be really hard to actually get stuff running, especially because he doesn't have Mike Evans. He could get Chris Godwin over free agency if he leaves. So there's a lot of things that he can do, and I want to see who he gets hired to. Our next guy is a Cowboys guy, and he is known for a certain thing that happened. I'll take this one. And his name is Kellen Moore. I think a lot of people know. He has a lot of QB experience. He has some experience in the playoffs this year, especially. His clock management is the reason they lost against the Niners. That made it all the way to the conference championship. He doesn't have that much coaching experience. He's only been coaching for a couple years now. He was the quarterback coach in 2018, 2019, and nowadays he is the offensive coordinator for the Cowboys. He played quarterback for a little bit of time. for the Lions and Cowboys. So, yeah. But the other thing that is a very big concern is he has so much on that offense. Maybe it's just talent that's just running this offense and not really him, because they have people like Dak Prescott, Ezekiel Elliott, Tony Pollard, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, and Amari Cooper all running this offense with a great offensive line. I need to see Kellen Moore, number one, clock manage a better game, and two, just become just a better head coach without all these options on this team to throw to and all that. So, yeah. Jack.
Kellen Moore is a very interesting head coaching candidate. I think he's a little too inexperienced to get a job this year, but he was a former quarterback, which is always good for developing any young quarterback. And he has been to the playoffs a couple times in his tenure. Bad news is, yep, he drew up that terrible play to Dak where the slide and then they can get the spike off, and it was a whole problem. He hasn't been coaching for too long. It's only been a couple years. And the Cowboys have always had a lot of talent. I'd like to see him do it with a little bit of talent, not this amount of talent. I don't see him as somebody that's ready to go yet. He'll get interviews every year, but I think he's got to keep working on it, keep going to work as an offensive coordinator and developing a game there until you're ready to take on the head coaching leader role. We'll see moving forward. Doubt he gets a job this cycle, but I do like him for the future. We'll see. What are your thoughts, Josh?
I think also this is another future guy who will be more in talks when head coaching comes up in the future, but not right now. He needs to work on a couple flaws in his game and just become a better head coach. Now, I don't know if he'll do that under Mike McCarthy. I think he'll probably need a better head coach to develop under, but this is a start, and he looks like he has the things that he needs to become a good head coach. So it's not right now. It's not going to be in this hiring period, but it will be soon, probably.
Okay, and our final guy of this video is going to be a guy named Josh Lombardi. Not Josh, Joe Lombardi, my bad. Yeah, I'll just take this one because it's the last one. He's age 50. His college that he went to was Air Force. He's been around a lot. He's a part of the Jim Marone, I think that's his name, tree, which is a tree that does not get a lot of people. Yeah, he's been mostly offensive coordinators for. He's coordinated for Chargers and Lions. He's been a QB coach for the Saints. He won a Super Bowl with them. He was an offensive assistant for the Saints also, and he was a defensive assistant for Atlanta. Not too much defensive. He's more of an offensive guy, but there is some good stuff, like he developed Justin Herbert to what he is right now. He's had a very well-run offense, and he's had a strong role in that offense. He's had a great role as the Chargers OC because they have a defensive-minded coach. So, yeah. I'm going to hand this one off to Jack.
Now, Joe Lombardi, this is an interesting one. He wasn't really on my radar for the most part, but then the more I looked into him, the more interested I am in him moving forward. He has had a lot of experience moving forward. He's had a lot. He started in Falcons, it looks like, and then he moved to the Saints. Hopped around for the Saints for a bit. Then he became the Lions OC for a bit. Then went back to the Saints, and then finally returned to the Chargers for the modern-day Herbert. I guess he came with Staley. And one big trade is he developed Justin Herbert into who he is today, which is always good. He's got good offenses pretty much everywhere he goes. And this is Brandon Staley-led team, so this isn't like there's some offensive mind like Kyle Shanahan for Mike McDaniels or Sean McVay for Kevin O'Connell. Like, this is his offense. This is his mind. He's probably calling the plays. This is his show, pretty much, which is good. That means that he's got a little more grasp on the offensive game. It's going to be easier for him moving forward. There are some cons. He hasn't always seen success. Got let go in Detroit after a 1-6 start, and he's got an interesting form of offense. But overall, I like him moving forward. I wouldn't mind him getting hired this cycle. I don't think it's going to be this cycle. I think what he offers moving forward is very good, and he could be a big selling point for someone looking to develop a young QB. He's got Justin Herbert on his resume, similar to how Brian Dable was able to use Josh Allen on his resume to get the Giants job. What are your thoughts, Josh?
All right.
Or have you already gone?
I think that Joe Lombardi, he's a very mixed bag. I think I need to see a little bit more before I can say anything. One thing that I need to see is playoff experience. A lot of these other coaches that we're talking about at least been to playoffs. I haven't seen Joe Lombardi in playoffs, or I haven't seen him in a big role in playoffs. His biggest role was quarterback coach for the 2009 Saints. If you don't know the 2009 Saints, they won the Super Bowl, but that was also Bountygate. So I need to see more of him before I can make my decision. He seems to go with some new school tactics, which, like the fourth down at their own 20, can sometimes blow up in his face, and not always success does follow him. Sometimes he has a problem with trying to get success, but I think that put in the right situation and with a little bit more time, Joe Lombardi can be one of these premier candidates.
Alright, that does it for our video today. It's a very long one. Thank you for making it all the way to the end of the video. We covered a lot, and maybe you saw some coaches that you liked. If you did, put it in the comments below. Like the video if you liked it. And if you enjoy watching our videos, you should hit the subscribe button. Jack, hit the plugs.
As always, don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Twitter at FrontlineFB, or it's right there. Just type it into your phone. This is a very interesting head coaching cycle. We'll keep you updated as everything develops. We'll be back here next week for Super Bowl picks, which will be super exciting. See you guys then.
See you.